As a next step, let's have a look at adding a calculated field. So let's say I want the percentage difference between actual and budget. You can easily add calculated fields to pivot tables by going to Options, and under Field Items and Sets, click on Calculated Field. Just note that these are quite restricted. So I can make a calculated field based on these with simple formulas. So for example, in this case where we want to calculate the variance, I can call this variance, and my formula would be, you just have to click on the labels. It's going to be actual minus planned, you can put the brackets on, divided by budget, by planned. And it adds it here. You can see my values in here. They're not formatted as a percentage. So I right mouse click. Where do I have to go? Not here, to here. Go to number format. And now I can say percentage. And if I want to show 1 decimal place or 2, I can select it here. This is dynamic. There's also other options you have of adding calculated fields to this. So if I would go back and bring back our field list, let's say I wanted to calculate the percentage contribution of agent A to the entire revenue. I can do that by adding actual revenue again to the values list. I can drag it down. You see it's right here. And then I can say, instead of showing it to me in this way, show values as percentage of grand total. You have a lot of options here, so you just have to go through them and see what you really need. You can also say rank largest to smallest based on sales agent. You can also show the difference from, and you can make an agent as a basis or just say the next. Next is basically the next in line here. The difference from next is really good when you have different years and different months. In this case, if we switch now the agent, put them up here, bring month down, show values as difference from, not sales agent, month, and previous. Okay, so that's the difference from this to this. And I can also show it as a percentage. All of these calculations can come in handy, so just go and check out the different options you have there. Now we're going to create a pivot chart. So I'm going to remove the stuff that I don't need. In this case, I don't want this percentage one. You can either just drag and drop it out, or you uncheck this. I want the actual revenue. I also don't want the total here, so I can also right mouse click, remove grand total. Based on this, I'm going to create a pivot chart. All I have to do is click this. You come to the Excel's Insert Chart options, but be aware that not all of these are compatible with the pivot charts. So for example, you wouldn't be able to create an XY scatter. It doesn't work. Note that this data here is connected to the pivot table. So whenever you have a pivot chart, you need to have a pivot table. I'm just going to drag this up to cover it. You can go on and modify your chart the way you would normally do. You get the pivot chart tools here, layout, format. You have an additional one because it's a pivot. The field buttons, for example, these are these. So I can click on that and hide everything, or just hide the ones that I want to hide. Now I can take that away. Just change the color and design the way you like. Now it's connected to this, so I can go to Agent A and have a look at how they performed. I can uncheck this and say, well, I want now only Agent B and Agent D and so on. You can make a chart title that's connected to your cell, so to this, that it always shows me the agent that I'm looking at in the chart. And what you can also do, if you don't like to use this filter here, you can add under Options, Insert Slicer. This is available from Excel 2010 onwards. So if you click on that, just let's see how it looks. And I say I want a slicer instead of this for the sales agents. So I check mark this, say OK, and I get this. Now, what this does is actually the same as what this one does. It just looks a bit better. It has buttons. Once I don't need this anymore, I can get rid of it. I can remove my sales agent as a report filter because I have it as a slicer. And with slicers, you also have some design options. You can adjust the columns. So let's say I want all of them right beside each other. You can also take away this title if you don't want it in the slicer settings. Generally, I don't like this border on the slicers, so I always get rid of it. If you go through all of these different styles, all of them have a border. To get rid of it, what you can do is you can create your own. So find one of these formats that you like most. So let's say we like the blue one. We can duplicate it. We can give it a name. You have the ability to change the formatting of each of these items in here. The borders are in the whole slicer. So you click on it, you format, go to border, and say none. You can also change the font. The font here is the font you see here, so I can make it smaller if I wanted to. Now nothing happened because we need to go to our new one. It's this one, Slicer Without Borders, and click on it. And we can position it wherever we want. I need to remove the border of my graph because it bothers me. I can put now this on the bottom and then look at the different agents. So it looks like a dashboard and it's really, really easy to do. What about if I wanted to create a chart that has more impact, that's more flexible? Because our chart is restricted to the data in the pivot table, we're also restricted on the type of charts we can make. What if I wanted a very nice, flexible chart that always highlighted the month that the agent had the highest sales in? What I can do is use Excel's Get Pivot Data function. And what that does is that I can make a separate section which runs off the original data from the pivot, and my new chart is going to run off this data preparation table. What I mean is this. So let's say in my charts, I don't want to show all the time data from Jan to June or until the month the data comes in. I want to show the entire year, and the column should pop up the moment the data for the next month comes in. So what I can do is, let's just copy this here and paste this as values. I'm going to pull this down to December. This is going to be my revenue. And watch what happens now. I'm going to say equals this. You see, I get pivot data function popping up here. And Excel already puts these fixes like January, the month, the revenue, because that's its way of looking up the cell. So even if the position of these cells change, it finds it because of this function. So always to be on the safe side, I recommend that you do use this function. The only thing you can do is to make it more dynamic, because now you see this is fixed to January, so if I pull this down, it's also January. I just change that and make it a cell reference. So in this case, this. And here I get references, so what I can do is use the if error function. Now you're going to see what I'm getting at. So if I wanted the max value to show up here, because I want to bring it into my chart, I can use a formula saying if this is equal to the max value in this range, then show me this number. Otherwise, don't show me anything. I need to fix this and pull this down. So this is the maximum. And now I'm going to design my own chart. So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to create a chart based on this data. And now I can see the full year view. And don't worry about this. What we're going to do is right mouse click, format data series, and increase overlap to 100%. Which means that this one is covered now by this new bar chart. Now this is a technique that I cover in my Excel chart course. So I'm going through it really fast here, but if you're interested to learn more about these techniques, you can visit the other course. I just want to show you here that you can use the get pivot chart data function to create more dynamic analysis or even dynamic charts. So in this case, let's just change the formatting. Let's decrease the gap width. So now where did our slicers go? Oh, they're here. So now watch this. See, we have a really neat dashboard report, and the moment we get more data, all of this updates. Now, one last thing I'm going to show you is the ability to group things. So in this case, we had our year and month in separate columns, but don't worry how your dates come in. So even if they come in this format, PivotTables can handle it. So all you would do is insert the pivot, and I'm just going to bring some basics over. Now here for dates, what you can do is right mouse click and group. You can decide how you want to show this. So if you want months and years separately, you hold down Control and then you select years. If you had dates as well, you can do that with days, months, and years. And when you say OK, it splits it up. Years is the new one, and the date changes to the months. The only thing that comes in addition are these smaller and greater than based on your last dates. But that's something that you can also hide if you create a pivot slicer if you have Excel 2013 and above. And the last part is that pivot tables are also a great tool for removing duplicates. So let's say you have this list of the sales agents and you just want to get the unique values in a really fast way. I mean, there are many ways of doing this, of filtering, of removing the duplicates option in Excel, but you can also use pivot tables. All you have to do is to highlight this one column. In this case, if you have more than one column, then just highlight those and then do Insert, Pivot Table. Just have sales agent now, so just bring it to rows. You can copy this and paste it in a separate column, and you have your unique values. You can see that pivot tables are so flexible, they can solve a lot of problems. In the next video, I will show you how you can format your pivot to really make an impression. It's really all about the small design details.